speaker is Professor Francis Koti on understanding peri-urban water resources in Kenya using participatory GIS. Dr. Koti is a professor and chair at the Department of Global Studies and Human Geography at Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He's an urban geographer, and his research interests revolve around the use of participatory geographic information system methodologies to investigate various aspects of urban geography and community development, including peri-urban development, quality of life, community resource use and access, the built environment, and community health. Professor Koti has been particularly interested in water supply markets around large African cities, looking at coping mechanisms amid declining supply. He holds an MA and PhD degrees in geography from West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia. Dr. Koti, it's a pleasure to have you today. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Like you heard, my name is Francis Koti, and I'm speaking to you from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. My presentation today, as you've heard, we are looking at understanding peri-urban water resources in Kenya using participatory geographic information systems. And in the slide that just popped is the overview of my presentation. And just to give you background, Active River, named for the river that runs through the town, is 30 kilometers southeast of Nairobi, as you can see on that image there. And there is about unofficially 150,000 residents if you look at the small township, but the greater municipality could have as many as 300,000 people living within the municipality. This study you are hearing is preceded by studies I've done in these cities since 2002 to 2014, basically looking at how space in communities outside of large cities is mediated, and the second study looking at different aspects of growth, specifically how local communities respond to rapid urbanization, and another study that looked at aspects of social and spatial exclusion of vulnerable groups in terms of resource access or resource supply. And during that time, I realized water had become a persistent issue. Well, just talk a little bit about the peri-urban landscape. Generally, these are considered settlements on the fringe of large cities, and they have specific characteristics. Some of them being that they grow way too fast than matching resource capacity, and the growth is sometimes sporadic. And it creates a differentiated space economy that comprises a population that lives there, a population that only sleeps there, and a population that is totally devoid of urban character, creating more of a social fabric that is very diverse. And a lot of times these communities, I argue, are not very well understood, yet the data in those areas is fragmented, just to use a better term, and generally these communities are very weak financially. In this slide you're looking at now, which is the peri-urban landscape, I'm not particularly interested in the peri-urban areas of large cities, but peri-urban towns, which are towns that developed on their own right, but because of the growth of Nairobi, they are now within the larger metro area, meaning that they host a population that actually does not live in those places. They only use those places as bedroom places, but work elsewhere and come in here. So really the resident population is small and less concerned. The larger part of the population is less concerned with less involved in local activities because they only come here at night. This image here gives you an idea of where Active River is in. That letter B is what is the resident small township that has grown into the larger municipality. And as you can see, there are two population centers. The A is a center closer to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, which is where Nairobi is, and B is the second large population center, which is the original Athi River town. Giving you more context, there are significant developments which have taken place in this city which have caused me to become interested. You can see many of them there which have happened in the last 20 years, but I will highlight 3. The first one is the fact that about 30 years ago, they realized we are growing too fast, we cannot afford to provide water for the industries and for people. So what about divert water from the nearby Nairobi city? But to do that, we need the infrastructure that we do not have money for. Coincidentally, the Export Processing Zone Authority located in the town and offered to provide the infrastructure if factories are prioritized. And so it entered a deal with the local authority to provide the infrastructure to divert water from Nairobi into the community, but prioritize its factories, which produce products for export. The second development was a Water Act, which was amended in 2002, establishing a national water strategy that privatized water provision, such that a municipality would have a department of water that does not necessarily provide water. Water would be provided by a private company, and in this particular case, it is the Mavoko Water and Sanitation Company, which means there is a corporatization and privatization of water. And then in 2010, there was a promulgation of the Constitution, which created a devolved system of government, which means water management goes to the county government. In other words, there is a contradiction that a private company gets to provide water, but authority really resides in a county government, which was contradictory. And so before that Water Act, there were only 2 cement manufacturing companies. And after that, there were 6 large cement manufacturing companies. And so competition for water increased because of industry need, or meeting industry demand, and also meeting use by local communities. So if you can see in this slide, the top left is a sprawling real estate or booming market. There are flower farms in the city. Then there is the export processing zone production on the bottom left. And in the middle, you will see the cement manufacturing companies. And then the result is on your bottom right, which is what happens with residential use of water. So this picture here I put here to show you the diverse communities that live here. On the top left is your factories. To the right, top right, will be local communities that are generally considered low income. And you can see the booming real estate market in your bottom right, and communities on your bottom left that still graze their cattle within the city, creating a very diverse state economy. On a regular day when you are in the city of Athi River, you will at least have in sight someone delivering water, either through a truck, using a donkey cart, or on a bicycle, and this is a scene that is less than 20 years old, which means something happened 20 years ago that has created water to become a serious issue in the city. So what this study does is to look at how the urbanization process or peri-urban water supply system works in this scarcity. And secondly, to look at how local communities are coping with that scarcity, and then see whether we can propose alternative ways to document and communicate effectively the water situation. So what are PGIS methodologies? So participatory GIS methodologies are generally GIS. In other words, build a system within a computer that has data that is location-based data that analyzes, manages, manipulates sometimes, and stores information that is location-based. The difference with a regular GIS system is that within a participatory GIS methodology, you have an opportunity to input local knowledge within the GIS as an information layer. And so I won't get much into the concept of GIS, how it came about, but if you look at one of the slides here, this slide here shows you the kinds of layers you would expect in a GIS system that is participatory in nature. At the top, you will see the community local knowledge. And I'll go back to one slide here just to tell you why I prefer to use participatory methodologies. One, the conventional GIS data set is likely to show me things that are quantifiable or things that are visible using a satellite image. And I don't get to hear the story in an environment where data is not available. I don't get to hear first floor gets water, third floor does not get water because pressure is not enough. I don't get to hear histories of social exclusion that are at the back banner. And so I prefer to use these methodologies to get that community perspective about how local groups access resources. When I went there in 2014, I went and talked to communities and asked specific questions. Tell me how the story of water has evolved. And here, as you can see in that image, folks would come and tell me, here is where we used to get water from, but now people have settled there and we cannot get water from this area. Or these are areas which were preserved for certain uses. And so I would document that information and input it into a GIS using multimedia approach. In 2014, one of the things that I thought was interesting was I decided to actually take a trip with one of the people that deliver water just to see how the system plays out. And interestingly, as we walked around, it is about a 2-mile walk, I realized he had a small little box on his cart. And this box had keys. And I was concerned whose keys these were. And apparently he delivers water to people's houses who are not there. And so these people rather trust this gentleman to deliver water in their houses in their absence, and rather than take the risk of standing in long queues to wait for water, which I thought was quite interesting. And we delivered water in a few places, and I was using a GPS to track how far they walk and listen to the narrative which I included in the GIS database. These are some of the things I could hear when I speak with people. These residents of one of the areas known as Kisumu Ndogo say the biggest problem here at Kisumu Ndogo is water. You can have a good house with a toilet, but you cannot use the toilet because you don't have water. Look at these people waiting for water. You can wait here for sometimes more than 2 hours. You say there's something else development should talk about. So telling me that water here was a critical issue which no one was paying much attention to. And clearly my GIS could show that this pipe here is transporting water to a nearby area, but when you get to that area, folks will tell you they do not have water in those areas. And then I spoke to some of these people who lived here for more than 50 years. And this gentleman here told me that supposing we all build these nice houses, what does it matter to have a good house if you have no water, no sewer or no public toilet, or no public transportation or health clinic, or impassable roads, telling you that he has seen water disappear from their area. There are more narratives here which you can look at when you look at this, when you see this slide here. Notice I have 3 minutes to go, so I will not focus much on that. What I would like to discuss here very briefly is the framework. There is a national framework that sets these National Water Resource Management Authority that puts water under private companies. And then there is the local supply, which has 4 main sources. The water diverted from Nairobi source, boreholes sunk by the municipality, and the Kilimanjaro water, which mainly goes to the flower farms. And I noticed there were 2 systems. A formal system, which is pumping water to people's houses or from the kiosks. But then there is the donkey carts, which is an informal water supply where they obtain the fresh water from the EPZ authority and deliver in people's houses. Interestingly, the local communities tended to trust the informal supply for many reasons, one of them being the reliability. They would argue the water provided by the city is not reliable and was salty. So they preferred the gentleman who can deliver the water in their absence and leave because they are able to pay through the mobile money system they call M-Pesa. So this image here is what sums up the delivery system or the supply model. The blue is the fresh water. The yellow is what is considered salty water. So the Mavoko Municipal Water Supply Company gets all the water from fresh sources and the salty sources, puts it in one tank and supplies to other places. You notice the donkey guy gets the water from the EPZ kiosk. That is straight fresh water, and that is probably why the informal supply is preferred. And so once that water is obtained, it is pumped to houses, but there is a system where the water engineer has divided the city into neighborhoods they call rich and neighborhoods they call poor. The rich neighborhoods are considered that they can afford the booster system or the tanks, so they get water twice a day. In the poor neighborhoods, they get water 3 times a day. So that puts the donkey guy in the middle, and he is much more reliable than the water provided by the municipality. And so this slide here gives you the idea how water was poorly negotiated with a deal that was cut back in the 90s that put the EPZ authority in the middle of water provision to the extent that the municipality itself obtains water from the EPZ authority. So that has put 3 different government ministries in collision course, and it didn't take long before the water fields of 2019, which started last March. And just a few weeks ago, there were shutdowns in the city where people were vandalizing the water infrastructure by the EPZ authority. So I'm going to skip here and get to what the study findings are here, that the rapid growth of these peri-urban communities has not been matched with growth of resources and the capacity to provide water, and that the public-private partnership really does not work where water is already a problem, especially peri-urban communities, and that peri-urban towns tend to present a unique case that calls for a different supply model. I'm proposing a community-based supply model where local community controls water supply and access. So I will stop there, and I will take any questions. If you get a chance, visit this system here I've created that tends to document that information that I've provided by going to this link here, which is a story map on ArcGIS Online. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Professor Carter, that was excellent. Thank you. And precisely the kind of topic we were looking for in our consideration of a topic of water availability for today's webinar. So there are several questions that have come in. We only have time for one, but in particular, the complications that have come out of this system seem to have devolved onto making sure that the donkey guy is the trusted final capability for getting water from one place to another, whether it's coming from a private or a public source. Can you talk a little bit about cost across these availabilities? Where does Donkey Guy fit in this? How is this a viable option for him?
That is a very good question. The cost of water before the water crisis, which started last year, the cost of water between the Donkey Guy and the water provided by the municipality was comparable. And it was approximately 20 shillings per 20-liter can, which is about 25 cents here in the United States. So the cost was comparable. However, starting from last year when water became a serious issue, it went from 20 shillings to 100 shillings, which is $1 per 20-liter jerrycan.
That's an interesting change. So one last quick thought. Several of us have been watching the locust infestation that has come across from Yemen and is spreading across East Africa. Dr. Eric Frost is asking about the impact of the locust infestation on water availability. Is there any impact there?
This is a very interesting case because Athi River usually gets about 400 millimeters of rainfall per year, and the vegetation there is the savanna grassland, and much of the area has been built up. I have not heard any specific concerns of the locust infestation. Nearby Machakos town has had those issues, and I haven't had a chance to know whether that has specifically affected the water.
Got it. Thank you very much. It was beautifully timed, really useful information, and exactly the kind of thing we wanted to hear. Thank you very much. We will move on. Thank you, sir. And